Father William, an analysis of Father William by Carrolll. You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it might injure the brain. But now that I am perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again. You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turned a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that? In my youth, said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling the box. Allow me to sell you a couple. You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life. You are old, said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever, yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs. Now this is a very famous comic poem by Charles Dodgson, the mathematics don from Cambridge University. Yeah, it's very funny. It's great for kids. Kids love it. Why do they like it so much? Because it inverts normal logic. You think you're going to get one thing and you get something else. So the context is a young man asking questions of an old man. What we expect is the old man to be giving advice about how to live a good life, and the young man listening and taking it all in. However, that's not how it is. It's actually a lot of rather ridiculous questions asked by the young man, and even more ridiculous answers given by Father William. So, yeah, that's why kids like it so much, because it inverts logic. You expect it's going to be something long and boring, or they expect something long and boring and didactic, and instead they get something hilarious. These days, perhaps not many people know that it's a parody of a poem by Robert Southey, published in 1799, called The Old Man and His Comforts and How He Gained Them. And that is exactly what we would expect it to be. It's a dialogue between an old man and a young man, and the old man is giving advice to the younger man and telling him how to live a good and long life. And it's disappeared without trace. Nobody reads it anymore. It was well known at the time of Carrolll, and yeah, he obviously thought it was a bit stodgy and decided to parody it in Father William. What's so great about Father William is the way that everything is just turned on its head. So if we look at the first stanza, you are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white. So now this is a sign of wisdom, age and white hair, so we expect the young man to be asking some advice of the experienced old man. However, it goes on and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? This is why kids will like it so much, because we expect something very formal, and instead we get something Monty Python-esque, something hilarious, really ridiculous, so just totally unexpected, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Why is Father William an old man standing on his head at his age? As the young man says, do you think at your age it is right? And then the answer of Father William is even more ridiculous. In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I thought it might injure the brain, but now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why I do it again and again. So a hilarious answer, really. He hasn't answered the question why he stands on his head. He's answered the question that he knows it won't, or he's told the young man that it won't injure his brain because he doesn't have one. And that's not at all what we were expecting. So these stanzas are setting it up seemingly for something serious, and then instead we get a conclusion that is ridiculous and hilarious frequently. You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turned a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that? So, same thing again. Now, of course, we are used to it. We know what's coming. We know that it's going to be something ridiculous. So the young man is actually rather insolent here, isn't he, in his question? You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before. Yes, well, no need to keep saying it. And have grown most uncommonly fat. So it's normal for perhaps older people to get fat, but don't really expect young people to be blaming them for it or being negative about it. And then what we know, or what we have come to expect from Lewis Carroll, something ridiculous that we never even considered or is in no way connected with what went before. Yet you turned a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that? It's like standing on his head. Why should he be doing back somersaults, an old man? It's ridiculous and extremely funny at the same time. A back somersault, so he can stand on his head and he has no brain and he can do back somersaults. And the young man asks him, what's the reason for doing that? In my youth, said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling the box. Allow me to sell you a couple. So now the old man is trying to sell some kind of potion to the young man so he can keep his limbs supple, so he can do back somersaults when he gets to be an old man. Utterly ludicrous again. The young man is his son as well, so he's trying to sell his son a couple of tubes of ointment that will keep his limbs supple so he can turn back somersaults in at the door when he gets older. So as the stanzas go on, it gets more and more difficult to surprise people. Now we know what to expect. We know to expect the unexpected and the ridiculous and the ludicrous. So let's see what comes next. You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife. And the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life. So Father William has very strong jaws, very strong jaw, and he can finish the goose with the bones and the beak. So how can he do this? How is he able to do it? And the reply is that when he was a young man, he was studying law, and he argued each case with his wife, and this gave his jaw muscular strength, which has lasted all his life. Totally ludicrous, totally ridiculous again, and yet it's very funny, and it's really hilarious for anyone reading it the first time. It's really funny and amazing the way Lewis Carroll can keep surprising us, even when we come to know the kind of thing he includes. He still manages to surprise us, and that's amazing, really. "You are old," said the youth. "One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever, yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever?" So, another question, how does he manage to balance an eel on the end of his nose? So he's a clown, right? He's not an old man full of wisdom. He's a clown. He stands on his head and he turns back somersaults in at the door, and he balances eels on the end of his nose. He's a clown. That would be suitable for a circus, really. However, this time Father William doesn't give a reply. "I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough," said his father. "Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs." So, a great way to finish it, with the old man just saying, "Enough of your stupid questions. I can't stand here listening to them all day." Presumably he has all sorts of ridiculous things to do, standing on his head and balancing eels on his nose, turning back somersaults in at the door. So he's not at all the wise old man that we would expect. From the start of the poem, he turns out to be a total clown, and his son extremely insolent, and they seem suitable pair, really. But the poem is extremely funny and illustrates very well the great ability Lewis Carroll had in his nonsense verse to really just surprise us all the time by turning logic on its head and giving us something totally unexpected. The actual structure of the piece, well, it's interesting because "You are old, Father William," the young man said. "You are old, Father William," the young man said, "and your hair has become very white, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right?" "In my youth," Father William replied to his son. Yeah, it's 12. It's a line of 12. So basically the structure is a line of 12 syllables followed by a line of 10 syllables. 12, 10, 12, 10. And the rhyming scheme is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, like that all the time. So there are a lot of rhymes in the poem, and it's, of course, makes it more difficult to make something structurally sound. When you are rhyming so much of the time, you have to find the right word, and it has to rhyme with a near neighbor. So, yeah, 2 rhymes in a 4-line structure is, of course, it's more virtuoso. It's more difficult than 2 rhymes in a 4-line structure. And yet it's very smooth, and it runs very well, and you always feel that he's not grasping for a word just because of the rhyme. You feel that everything is just as it should be. All the vocabulary is occurring always as it should be and in the right place. If we think about the meter, we looked at the dactyl before in Thomas Hardy's poem The Voice, and the dactyl was foot of one stressed syllable, and two unstressed. So, woman much missed how you called to me, saying that now you are not as you were. So that's one stressed syllable followed by two unstressed. That's 1 foot, and that's a dactyl. Now this is the opposite. It's two unstressed followed by a stressed syllable. That is a foot here. You are old, Father William the young man said, and your hair has become very white. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? So the lines are long, but there are not so many feet in each line. You are old, Father William the young man said. So 4 feet in the 12 syllable line, and 3 feet in the 10 syllable line. And your hair has become very white. So each foot is two unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. You are old, Father William the young man said, and your hair has become very white. So it's the opposite of the dactyl. The dactyl creates a mood of unease suitable for supernatural things, ghosts and voices of the dead. But this is totally different. It's a kind of funny verse, funny meter, and very suitable for nonsense verse or comic poetry in general. So the opposite of the dactyl, the anapaest. It's an anapaest. It's two unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable, and that's the foot. Two unstressed followed by a stressed. An anapaestic meter, an anapaest foot. Two unstressed and a stressed. You are old. Do you think at your age? In my youth, Father William replied. You are old and have grown, yet you turned. So it's an anapaestic meter, very suitable for comic verse. The vocabulary is quite simple, although occasionally he uses a nice, an unusual word or for the context. And yet you incessantly stand on your head. That's a nice word in the context. Incessantly, big word to mean always. So, incessantly. So makes it seem a bit funnier, I think, when he uses a few long words, like they are serious people with big vocabularies, but actually they're both clowns, aren't they? They're both like comedians. Anything else about the vocabulary? No, it's mostly very simple, I think. Mostly very simple. So, of course, it's totally different to the Robert Southey poem, which it's based on. And, Lewis Carrolll, Charles Dodgson, was a child at heart, and he loved entertaining children, and he knew what they liked, and he knew what they didn't like, and he knew that something like Robert Southey's old man would bore them to tears. So he wrote a parody of it, and now the original that the parody was based on is totally forgotten, and it's only the parody that has survived. So this is really memorable, and something which anybody or anybody who read it when they were younger remembers as they grow up, because it was so delightful at the time that they heard it. It's also great for these kind of poems, great for learning the language as well, and the rhythms of your own language as you grow to maturity. So have to give Lewis Carroll, Charles Dodgson, great credit for this wonderful comic poem, which has an anapaestic meter. So I hope you found that short analysis useful. Yeah, thanks a lot.